Welcome everyone to Something Wicked Film Festival. This is our third panel. We're talking about pre and post production. So we have Colin over here. Colin, do you want to introduce yourself? What your documentary you're talking about, and what's about?
Yeah, the documentary is called Heart's Road. It's a visual journey of basically what I've experienced and seen and photographed over the last 30 years. So it took, in essence, 30 years to put this film together. Over 2,000, probably 2 million miles I've traveled in 95 countries. And then got probably a year and a half editing it, and probably almost 3 years writing all of the original score, because I write, perform, played every note, and produced and engineered the entire score. So that was an important also aspect of what I wanted to bring to this, because the music became the voice of the photographs. So that was very important that I was able to put that forward and enter that space.
So going into that again, like when people talk about filmmaking, everyone talks about editing and everything that post and pre. That really is the thing that makes or breaks a film. Everyone talks about how sometimes, oh, the film was good, but the editing was bad, or stuff like that. So I know, Colin, you said that you did both. So how was that, being basically like doing all of that? And like you said before, this was a long project in the making. So how has all of that, just the time process, affected your document, affecting Heart's Road?
Yeah, it was very difficult as well, because we were set to release in March of 2019. And then it's like, oh, wow, what do we do now that, COVID has hit? It's like, they're not going to have festivals. Do we put this on ice until this is over? I mean, originally, possibly just me or others. I mean, I thought this was going to last 2 or 3 months, and that's it. We'd be over this by summer. Woohoo. Everything's great. Back to normal, if you will. And then it just kept going on and on and on. And then it was just after almost 2 years of keeping it on ice, it's like, I think we need to put this out in the film festival world and see where this takes us, if it's going to be embraced, because it is a bit of an outlier, I must admit, simply because maybe more people are maybe used to a narrator telling them what to think, telling them what to feel, or giving them statistics or quotes, or this is going on, that's going on. Then everyone's catching up with the statistics, the words, the interviews, or it might be an editor at a museum that I've had an exhibition at. So there's so many different ways this could have gone, but beautifully, I've seen other people do, documentaries on them as photographers or creatives, and it goes down that route. I really wanted to do something that really spoke to the world in the universal language of photographs and music. And I wanted this to play as beautifully in Reykjavik, in Tokyo, in Buenos Aires, in Benares, and not have people sit and read captions or going to have to listen to someone else speaking English. I wanted this to be, in many ways, my love letter to the world, to my career, and to what I've seen, and to put that out there into the world to be accepted or not, depending on where it went. But we've been very fortunate, that it's been very well received by some communities, and it's been quite a journey for sure.
So we'll first talk about pre-production, which, as we just talked about, there's a lot with that. So when you were going about this project, how was it deciding, like, okay, I want to use this photo in at this part, or like when you were going to cut a room floor of like, all right, this is the stuff I want to cover in these photos and these places to cover in your project?
Yeah, a lot of that took place actually where I'm sitting, which is my music studio. And a lot of that was really, for me, I've got my two big screens here. So I've got the photographs on one side, my music on the other, and I'm going through those photographs and, quite frankly, doing my utmost to, one, enter that space where I was in Romania in 1996, and then two, feeling the energetic, if you will, feeling of that photograph and what those emotions felt like, not only for me, but for the people that I photographed, that I shared and spent all that time with. And that music is pulling that out of me from my experience. So that was something that, set in motion a whole series of triggering photo essays. Because what I do normally is I create a photo essay. I don't create singular images. So I'll go to Romania and create a body of work on the children that are living in the underground sewers, that are living at the train station. I'll do another major project in Romania on children living with AIDS, and I'll do another project on oil in Romania. So there's 3 different projects that I'm circulating in Romania over multiple trips just to that country. And then it comes time with me sitting down here, tapping into that emotional energy, feeling that music, and then finding that music with my guitars, my keyboards, drums, all the different things that I bring into these different songs. And really, again, looking for the voice of the photographs, then being able to distill that over a long period of time to put all that, together. Because I obviously wrote more, certainly much more, music than what I was ever going to be able to use actually in the actual piece. But a lot of it took time to put together. Then once I got together with the flow with the editor to keep this moving, to keep it interesting, everything's moving, flowing, pushing, pulling. The photographs are up for maybe 9 seconds, a second in to push into it, a second out to get out of it. So for me, sometimes it was mathematics. It's like, okay, this song is 3 minutes, 56 seconds long that I've chosen for Darfur. Divide 13 by, the amount of seconds. It's like, okay, I've got to walk into the edit room with 17 photographs that are going to fit in this sequence. And then everything has to, for me, editing is everything. So everything has to dovetail. So just like any editing sequence, an image comes up here, it's being replaced by a main subject over here. So the images are flowing from here. Something comes in from up here. Something passes through this way. So the images are in continuous motion, and then the editing is actually sequencing where all those different pushes and pulls, are and where they're best viewed. And sometimes, it's losing images. So I'm going to go in with those 17 images, and I'm going to have probably 12 to 15 as backups, because we're going to get into that situation. And it's like, God, that image doesn't flow. It doesn't work here. It's like, God, I know. It's like, God, I hate to lose this image. Okay, what else have you got? Then I got to pull the next image forward. How about this one? We drop that into the sequence, and then we set that in motion and see how that flows. And sometimes, he needed extra room on the edges to grab because he had to flow into the image. So maybe interesting compositions that are maybe more towards the edges, or full frame images with lots of content going on. Sometimes we couldn't even use those because the way that the edit worked to float in the image, we're losing, 20% of the photograph on the left and right. So sometimes it's editorially based on what works best for the sequence and the actual edit. So it's interesting, very interesting.
Oh yeah. So you talked about the music again, compensating all that. How was that whole process of again, like music really, especially with Hearts Row, music really makes a whole lot of it. So what was your whole method behind deciding to go about that?
It was really interesting. I had originally worked with another wonderful producer, musician, brilliant guy. And, we worked on 14 songs. But it did come to the very end, and it's like, well, okay, there's royalties and publishing and all that sort of stuff. So, that was like, and my dear friend James said to me, it's like, look, this is the last thing you're going to want to hear. It's going to take you about a year to learn this incredibly deep and complex system to work, to engineer. You need to build your own studio. You need to buy all of your own instruments. You need to create your own space. And you need to start at absolute zero and take complete ownership of everything. And that was like, wow, okay, that's a big one. And I'd gone all the way back to seeing, I was a singer in a band back at 16, 17. So music was in my blood. Music had really been such an important part of my entire life and brought me into so many places. I mean, Peter Gabriel's Biko, and then, you know, it's so powerful for how much that song meant to me before I was a photographer, and then being in photographing during apartheid in South Africa, in Soweto. It's just to go to that place that those musicians took me in my imagination, whether it's Dead Kennedys and Holiday in Cambodia, all the work that I've done in Cambodia, all of the work that I've done in Belfast, Northern Ireland, starting with U2, you know, the Police, the Invisible Sun. So all of these groups and music was planted early on for me in these amazing journeys for me musically. And then, you know, I really love ambient music, and, you know, some of it triggered when I saw, you know, some incredible ambient artists come up. They might come up with a couple of laptops and they're doing their thing, and that's great. Sometimes it's someone on a keyboard or a guitar, but they're standing on a stage and we're in this beautiful space, but behind them is completely black. And it was just that light bulb moment sitting there going, oh my God, whoa, wait a minute. If I could put polar bears up there, if I could put Antarctica up there, if I could put these aerials of melting glaciers in Iceland, if I could take them to the gauchos in Argentina, it's like, holy moly. It's like, this could be, it's like, oh shit. Okay. Wow. This could happen. And I could put this, and I could have a screen there, and I could run, God, 30 years of my work along with the ambient music. So that started that journey with James. We created those songs together. And then he said, dude, total ownership. You own all the publishing, everything. You really should do this yourself. All the photographs are yours. Go for it. So he wonderfully, he connected me with another wonderful Berkeley graduate. And he came in here to the studio once a week for about a year and a half and just grinded me into the ground every week with what I was doing, how I could do it, what I was doing wrong, learning. He became my spirit guide in terms of, you know, finding the music. And then obviously, you know, he was here for about an hour. And then, you know, honestly, I was at this 6 to 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day for about a year and a half to get everything to a particular place. And then jumping off, writing all the rest of the music on my own was another 2 years before I finally put everything together. There are probably 43 original compositions, and probably 16, 17 are used possibly. So, you know, because some of the songs didn't ultimately work as well as the others. And that was the whole thing. It's like, God, what do these photographs feel like? And that's why it was so important for me to do the soundtrack or the compositions or the ambient or these soundscapes, and taking the responsibility of the fact that, yeah, I was the one who was there. And I can't hire someone else who's going to look at the photographs and possibly be moved. Yes, and that's wonderful. But I thought, God, I really need to take this to the next space, and I really need to be able to occupy this. And indeed, jump off that cliff with nothing but more than a handkerchief to see where I was going to land, but take complete ownership of it. Because obviously, you know, me being there and all these experiences translates, you know, immeasurably. And again, I could have hired someone else, but I don't think Hearts Row would have been Hearts Row without that being my music. Then it would have been my participation with another great artist or musician, and that's our collaboration. That's beautiful. But the photographs asked for me, I think, really to create and to really take on this huge body of work, and to spend the time it took here to create the music that became, again, the voice of the photographs.
Which, speaking of the voices of photographs, again, they all look beautiful. And how was that process of acquiring all those photos? I know, like, you come from a great photography background, so you took, I believe you took all of them, correct?
Yeah.
So talk about the photography side of it when you were making those shots, and there's a lot that goes into photography, making sure the lighting's right, making sure the angle's right, you have the right lens. So how was that whole process early on, way pre-production, when you were doing that?
Yeah, that's a whole masterclass kind of on photography and what, I mean, photography to me has been always a very spiritual relationship. Photographs are not something that I take. Photographs are something that I make. In this usually really powerful, sometimes not always, experience of what happens in a very spectacular or very difficult or very emotional moment with someone. Again, whether they're a gaucho out on the Pampas in Argentina, or they're a refugee in Darfur, or a war in former Yugoslavia in Sarajevo. So all of these photographs take on, I think photographs are really incredibly powerful, and they have the potential really they've certainly, obviously altered my life and my entire journey, spending 30 years behind a camera. And then again is the misnomer that it's behind. I feel that I stand in front of my camera. And everything, there's an emotional energy also that occurs between myself and the people that I'm photographing, and that energy is what emanates from me. One of the gentlemen that I photographed in Cambodia, I was doing a project on the environment and the legacy of all the landmines that have been left in Cambodia. And I'm kneeling before this man. And I think one of the most important things that emanates from me, or my energy as a photographer, is that I'm photographing a landmine survivor. This man is a survivor. Is so much more important than emanating from me. I'm photographing a landmine victim. So that in and of itself, I know it's just a change of one word, survivor versus victim. But when it comes from me and the empathy that I hope and feel emanates from my soul as I photograph this man who's chosen to give his life to me through a photograph, this is my experience in this 1/25th of a second. I choose to, how I see this man as a survivor and a man of incredible power and strength. All of the people in my photographs in these difficult places are people of tremendous power and tremendous strength, the kind that I will never know. So it is, to me, a tremendous, responsibility being that person who is creating those images. And I do take that responsibility very seriously, obviously. And that goes, with how I see myself, so I maybe had the upbringing and who we are. And, I felt a lot of times I was photographing myself in the eyes of so many people that I photographed in the first 10 years of my career, and my own inner journey and my own inner landscape and some of the difficulties that I had. So, I had been blessed with so many incredible projects and pieces that I put together. And obviously back then, when I started on the streets of Belfast, Northern Ireland in the late 80s, or the genocide in Rwanda in 94. And, obviously I had no idea where this was going, that it was going to end up in Hearts Road, that it was going to end up anywhere. I was creating photographs. It was an amazing, incredible career, and doing what it is that I did and being in the forefront sometimes as history unfolded. And I was there with my, camera to create and to, put those moments forth through a photograph to the rest of the world, was an incredible drive and inspiration that obviously drove me around the world for almost 30 years straight to create the entire body of work that I had no idea why it was being created. It's like, yes, I had a wonderful museum show. They had like 120 images and all that's fabulous. And they did a book, but it didn't really feel like, I just didn't know why, but I always felt there was something more. And then it was indeed, the photographs that brought me there, and some of the video that I did, because I shot video for a number of years. I worked for a wonderful television station here in Los Angeles. So I did a lot of documentaries in Darfur and El Salvador and other projects like that. So I started to integrate video into my stills as well. And it sort of evolved, and it's been an unbelievable journey with the camera. I've written so much about it. Sorry, I probably carried on too long.
Oh no, you're good. Um, so how was that with, again, like you said, you've doing the art of photography for so long and now transitioning to transforming that into the art of documentary? How was that transition for you, taking your pieces and transitioning to a new form of media with it?
Yeah, I mean, that actually came as a bit of a, I mean, I was simply, obviously people have been setting music to photographs for, decades, but it's a Bob Dylan, or it's a, Crosby, Stills and Nash song, or it's something else. It's always someone else's music. And, that really just, encouraged me to sit in that space with the editor. And when I was sitting in there with the music, my original intent was, look, I'm going to do 3 songs, maybe. I'm going to do one on the Boulevard, because that has all the, there's all that really rich, complex patterns and drums and all sorts of stuff. And I actually did a book, right? I do all the writing from that, as well as probably 40 essays I've written for the Boulevard, and all the photographs and collages that I put together. So that was one song. I had that. And it's like, okay, then we're going to do Antarctica and the polar bears, and that sort of cross-pollination of those. And that's what I was going to do. And we sat there in the dark with the editor, and, we started to move images around and explain it to him. It's like, look, I want him to do this. I want him to flow. I want him to, this is how I want them to live and breathe on the screen. These are just for videos, and I'm going to put on my website. No big deal. And then it just came that time, obviously sitting in the dark, and the way that he dropped that one image from Antarctica just came slowly drifting down onto the screen. Again, it was that moment when I was in there watching in the audience with the person on stage and a black curtain behind him. That image dropped down, and I just thought, Jesus, that was an interesting, like, cinematic moment. And literally it was like, oh, wow. He's like, what? It's like, holy geez. I could take 30 years of my work and set this entire thing in like a feature-length documentary. And he's like, yes, let's do this. That's awesome. It's like Baraka, it's like Samsara, it's these other beautiful non-narrative films, except you're doing it with the power up the still image. He's like, let's do this. And that began that 1.5-year journey, is just seeing the way he slid that one photograph down and just going, wow, that was actually quite cinematic. And then it's like, cinematic. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah, we can definitely, this is something. There's something here. And then we just started to evolve it and work on one song after another. And I'm creating the music and building all this stuff together and finding the images. And, because that was a hunt in and of itself. After 30 years, it's like, God, I've got, 50, 75, hard drives with everything, loaded to the gills, and it's tracking all of that down and then getting all of them scanned up to a certain, space, and getting all of them worked on and all of them polished and perfect. And color correction in and of itself was a very interesting journey, so that was another, couple of months in that process, just making sure everything flowed and everything, met with the standards. And that becomes difficult, because there's so many different screens, so many different places, and it looks great here in the studio, but it might not translate great here or there. So, we simply do our best. But it innocently came alive when we thought we were working on something else, and then again that sort of crystalline moment happened. It's like, wow, this could be something bigger. And the editor was just like, wow, absolutely, let's do this. You got it. And that was, an amazing experience. Yeah, it was Saturday, Sunday. He worked his weekends, because this amazing guy was working Monday through Friday at his regular job, 60, 70 hours a week. Then he was in Saturdays and Sundays working with me. it was really his powerful dedication as well, and his belief in this project and system and where it's going. And yeah, so it's been again, it's been quite a journey with some beautiful people.
That's awesome. And goes to my next question about, like, again, post-production. That's the most interesting thing, is the editing room. That's always for directors the most potentially tense moment, depending on the chemistry with their editor, which is great to hear that you and your editor had such a great chemistry. How important was that, of those times where, like you said, he was so dedicated and you're there and you're working together to make, again, working to make your project, to make your masterpiece like that?
Yeah, he was just so oddly in from sitting in that. When I mentioned that, he was just, for him, it's like this. It's like, he was working Monday through Friday, for what it's worth, in the, commercial world, for all the big studios, cutting trailers. This is my job. And he's like, and then at the weekend, Colin, I get to feed my soul with you and the work and putting it together. So as I was like, God, David, I'm so sorry. It's so intense. You're working so hard. It's just like, no, this is pure beauty to me. This is what it means to me. This is what it gives to me. So bring it on. Let's keep going. What else have you got? Let's keep going. So it was just a beautiful, relationship with David, and how he saw putting the work together and how the images touched him. Some of them were, difficult. Obviously, he was in tears. I was in tears at times seeing these images, because they really took on a different life form. I've done hundreds of slideshow presentations and TEDx talks, Annenberg's and everything else, but it's an image. It's an image. And then this, now everything started to move, and the images took on a different life form in that sense because of that movement. Yes, they're still images, but now they're in motion. And they took on a different life for me. They took on a different power. And David and I really think felt that, and really felt that we were on this, journey together. And that's in essence what we were, along with the two producers, Mark Malloy and Heather McClintock. And all of us were, deeply involved in this journey and in this process. And then it all comes down to the darkened room on a Saturday and Sunday. And David's like, what do we got? What are we doing today? Where are we going? It's like, okay, we're going to do this project. It's like, oh boy, okay. We got to have something really light and easy after this. We got to have a nice, we got to cleanse the palate here. And that became part of the movie, of the documentary, as well, as having maybe something that was difficult, and then having something that was maybe more colorful, more artistic, that took, him, because ultimately he was the audience. I'd seen the photographs, I'd lived them. I was in the audience living these photographs with David. He was the first and one person in the audience, and how he absorbed them and how he felt about them and what he saw and how his mind worked. Because he's been doing editing for probably 35, 40 years, done hundreds of music videos and films and all sorts of stuff. So it's how those images crossed over into him, and him and I sitting in that darkened environment, just reliving these photographs as I did, and him experiencing them for the first time. And then just sometimes pressing pause and just going, you have to tell me what happened here. I'm sorry, we'll get straight back to it, but what happened? Then we'd have really fascinating lunches, that were just burst back into the space, and like, okay, let's get back in for round two, and slowly put these vignettes, together, because they're each put together as each song or each vignette. One of the songs is quite long, probably 13 minutes and something or other, but there's 5 or 6 different songs within that space. So, we try and work on, one song, and we put them together as each song progressed. We got a third or halfway through, and then we had all the pieces together. It's like, okay, what do we open with? What's next? What follows that? And that became that additional difficult task of, how do I arrange all of these pieces together? So that in and of itself was was, months of trial and error trying to put the correct sequence, and then the music, and then fading that music from one song into the next. What's the key of this song? What's the key of that song? That's kind of a rub, that transition there. So what's flowing into what song, what's in what key, and how can this move forward and through the documentary, where it's just this seamless, I would hope, experience in this visual journey that people can take if they're interested in the ride. And again, it is a challenge because the first it's going to be different for each person, but I think at minimum it's 7 minutes. For people, it's 10 to 12 minutes, 15 minutes before they realize that they're into this, and no one's going to tell them what to think. And it's a bit of an awkward sort of space, like, wow, okay, I'm not really, I'm used to being, someone's telling me what to think. I'm being shown statistics. This museum director is telling me about the photographer, and I'm not getting that. So for people, it's like, wow, okay, I just need to, as a viewer, completely let go and just go on this journey, and then just be washed over by this incredible tide of photographs, this tide of 30 years of what I've seen in history. And then you sort of loosen your soul to that experience and going, okay, this is my visual journey. I don't know what's coming next. I don't know where I'm going to go or where I'm being taken, but okay, I'm in for the ride. And that's kind of that sort of space that I feel, where the movie, is interesting for people, hopefully. But there is that sort of initial stage of when you first sit in there going, okay, there's no one telling me anything. There's no stats. It's so difficult, because then you're trying to remember. It's like, wow, that's 1,354,000,000 people did this. Okay, that's 2 foot of ocean elevation. What's that going to mean in Antarctica? And that melts, and then the color temperature, and what's happening over here, and then, oh, there's visuals, and oh, there's music, and oh, this is all in motion. So it just became, I just committed to the visual journey, the journey again of my soul over 30 years, and the transformation, tremendous, that my soul has undergone as this world has frankly, broken my spine dozens of times over. So many difficult moments, there's so much trauma that I've absorbed being witness to what it is. And Hearts Road is but a small, piece of that. There's obviously, thousands of photographs and all of the emotions and time and the difficulties of creating and being responsible for the imagery and the lives that are being offered to me through these incredibly powerful people through the lens of my camera. So there's a lot going on. A lot of moving parts, if you will.
Oh yeah. I mean, you talked about it, and again, like deciding the sequences of things, deciding how the movement of your image is going, trying to, again, there was a lot of editing, a lot of like finite things that you wanted to do to make sure your message came across. So as people may not know watching this, you actually submitted it in 2 forms, a feature film and a short. So how was that process of deciding between the two, of being like, okay, I want this part to be part of the short, and I want this part to be part of the short, and deciding which one, how to make, what to be in the short and what to say in the feature film only?
Yeah, that was also a very interesting decision, and oddly enough, it was set in motion by the because if the museum exhibition was happening at the Southeast Museum of Photography, I was going to be. I had done an exhibition there 4 years earlier, and it was really, for some reason, it resonated powerfully with the audience. And so for me, 4 years later, to say, hey, I'm working on this project called Hearts Road, it was like, wow, we'd love for you to show that here. We'd love for, to revisit that in an exhibition. Wow, that'd be powerful. What can we add to it? So all those conversations got put in motion, and that was all happening in January. And the idea, of course, is that I was going to be able to, it was originally built as an hour 34 feature. And then all of a sudden it came to the museum. It's like, oh no, then we've got COVID. Then it's like, oh, I can now no longer submit the feature because it's already played in public at the museum. So it technically is no longer a premiere. And if I'm going to have it at some of these festivals, the premiere festivals, it needs to be a premiere. So it's like, oh my God, because the COVID thing, and then the museum show couldn't be moved. Then it's like, okay, and it's like, oh God, okay. I need to create an abridged version of this movie so that it stands separately so that I can still show the feature and premiere it at a festival. So that's what I need to do. It's like, David, it's like, yeah, we need to go back in and create a short. And that's kind of where the origin of the short was born, was in that moment of the museum exhibition was happening. The big feature of the museum exhibition was the screening in their amphitheater or theater thing there. That was the whole pull, was the screening of the documentary. So that's why we had to create the short. And then the short had the original bookends front and back. That wasn't gonna stay. That was gonna stay exactly as it was. And I was probably gonna start with Belfast and then where it went after there. Again, I had to find a different pace and flow for this. And just it was really strange to remove the rib bones from the feature, and to have this be able to stand on its own. And luckily, after about a month, I think, or so, 5 weeks, we came up with a something that felt like it worked for us, and it just sort of existed on its own in its own unique way, not knowing if it would ever really necessarily go anywhere. But there were, as I put the Hearts Road feature out there first, out into the film freeway world and the film festival circuit, and it was done incredibly well. And I was getting offers from short film festivals, and it's like, wow, this is a great opportunity. It's like, I can really, okay, yeah, this is great. This is I love everything about this short film festival. It's like, this is perfect. I want to be able to submit Hearts Road Short to the short film festival, and that's going to be great. So that was sort of the odd way as well in which I could put it into a short or put it into a feature. Or sometimes I love the sound of the festival enough, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to put in the long and I'm going to put in the short, and maybe they're going to find room for the short. Shorts may be a great fit. The feature might be a great fit. And sometimes some of the festivals, it's been interesting. I mean, a few of them, I entered, one of them for best documentary, feature. And I was officially selected for the festival. Certainly wasn't given an award for best documentary. But what they did is they gave me a best original score, and they gave me best cinematography. So it's like, so some of the festivals as well, it's like, look, we really love this, but there might be this other spoken word documentary that just like, wow, it took me over the top, but this is this, and it's kind of a unique standalone kind of piece. I haven't really seen this much. And it's like, okay, well, God, the score blew me away. It's like, let's put it into original score. Let's give this person, best cinematography. So sometimes festivals are really, it's some of them have changed the category, and some of them I haven't even applied for. One of I think the Swedish Film Festival was best. Yeah, they put in for director, and I'm putting in for feature. So sometimes the festival as well will sort of grab it, or another festival call me up and say, look, it says we really want this as a short. I know you've got the feature, and but we really love the short, and it's 38 minutes, so it's a lot easier to commit to. An hour and 34. I mean, the fact that you've seen them both is like, wow, incredible. But to like sit there for an hour 34, it's like, it's a commitment. It's a journey. You're going to see 30 years of light and dark. And I commend you for seeing that. I just feel sometimes I feel the short is a lot easier for people to take on and swallow than an hour 34. So I go back and forth with which one I like best and which one I think, and it's again, what's best ultimately for the audience. And then we get into distribution wise and sales agents, and shorts don't really sell, but features do. And then we've got so there's a lot of different things to weigh back and forth for, ultimately it's what best serves the photographs and what best serves the documentary. And then ultimately, the audience who is going to like it or love it or be confused or be inspired or, whatever the case may be.
Well, we'll wrap up one last question and we'll go with that. What is, again, because Hearts Rose is such a powerful, has a powerful message behind it. What would you like, your audience to walk out of after watching it, and other young filmmakers who are trying to get into the business, and they see they hear to see Hearts Road, and what kind of message do you want for them to have?
Yeah, the message is, the beauty of that message and the idea of what I wanted to put forth is that it's different for everyone. That's hopefully the goal. What I leave or what my takeaway is might be this, where another person's takeaway is that. Is it about the environment? Is it about ecology? Is it about humanity? This man, I just compressed 30 years of my life in an hour and 34 minutes. So to see what it is that I've seen in that period of time, and to be moved by climate, by Amnesty International, all these different incredible Doctors Without Borders that I've worked with throughout my career, on the Hearts film, on the actual website, there's a long list of all the incredible people that I've worked with throughout my career. So if you want to learn more, if you want to learn about Polar Bears International, I've vetted these folks. I've been there. I've worked with them in the field. If you want to do Doctors Without Borders, if you want to learn more about helping them, I've worked with them in the field in multiple locations around the world. So a lot of it to me is also about providing inspiration and providing a throughway for people to get from being inspired or being overwhelmed by something to, I want to learn more. How can I help? How can I make a difference? And the responsibility and stewardship that each one of us, or I speak for myself, takes in this world is, obviously I would hope that, the work touches people's souls, which it has, and motivated and moved people. I mean, the work has been so unbelievably, I don't even know the words, to begin. Just the gigantic honor of knowing that, millions of dollars have been donated, on the power of the work, or people have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for a single 11 by 14 inch photograph for the Human Rights Watch exhibition. Those are gigantic victories, raising $125,000 for Doctors Without Borders, on television, reaching 4.3 million people. I mean, to me, those are moments when my life, my creativity, my passion is at its best, is when I'm giving back the most, when I'm opening up enough hearts, enough eyes, enough minds. And that's part of what that journey is too, it's the journey of my heart. And I ask you to take that journey through your heart, through your lens, through your eyes. So let Hearts Road become yours, and take this visual journey and see where it takes you. I'm not going to tell you what to do or what to think. I'm hoping that it inspires you to move, to learn more, to donate. We've got a lot of trouble going on in our world just now. So there's a lot of different ways that people can help, a lot of different things that we can do in the environment and climate. And all of those answers are there, and they're unique for each and every one of us. that's sort of the unique journey again of the film. I think is it the hope is that it becomes your heart's road as well, and you take that journey and you question yourself about who and what you believe, what your beliefs are, and where we're going as a future of humanity, and if we can all play an important role in that, which I think we all can. It's important that we do. So it is my love letter to the world. So
awesome. Well, thank you, Colin, so much for joining us today. And thank you for submitting again. For the people watching, come see Heart's Road, both the short and the feature film if you can. And again, thank you, Colin, for joining us. And everyone watching, continue watch some of the other films submitted and all that. So thank you again for joining us, Colin.
Thank you so much, Philip. I really appreciate it. Huge. Thank you so much.
No problem. Have a good day.
Great festival. See ya. Bye.